What's going on, guys? It is finally October, and that means minnow time for walleyes. And in this video, I'm gonna give you 3 different rigs you can use, 3 different ways to fish minnows for walleyes in the fall. And I'll also give you a bonus rig that a lot of people don't use in the fall that's extremely effective at the end. So hopefully we can catch fish on all 3 today. I got a school here right in front of me. Maybe we can get one right now on this jig setup. Yep, there's a bite, guys. Now with a minnow this big, I'm not gonna set the hook right away. I'm gonna let him chew on it, start swimming away from me, and then put the boots to him, just like that. Oh, this is a nice fish. This is a nice fish. You know when you set the hook and they don't move? That's what you want right there. So this jig and minnow bite gets really good again in the fall like this. And it's just like in the spring, they just change back to minnows from night crawlers and leeches. And it usually happens in October. Oh, this is a dandy, guys. This is a dandy. I hope it's a walleye. There's a school of them down there and they sure looked like walleyes. Oh yeah. Get the net. Oh yeah, great start. Great start to the old minnow bite. Oh man, I love it. Look at that walleye, guys. Just a beautiful October walleye. And it is just crazy how the switch just flips in October and these fish start getting aggressive again. They start biting minnows again. And that's what I'm gonna talk about today. All right, guys, we're gonna save jigs for a little later and I'm gonna show you how to rig first. So rigging is very simple and a lot of guys seem to overcomplicate it. But what I like to do, especially if I can see the fish like on forward facing, is just a very simple 1/4 ounce slip sinker, a swivel, and about a 3-foot leader of 6-pound fluorocarbon to a number 2 VMC Tech Set hook. And this I can pitch to fish that are schooling, especially in deeper water. And a lot of times you'll catch one like I just did with the jig and then they'll just completely shut off the jig because it's not a supernatural presentation. This is gonna let that minnow swim around and let those walleyes chase it down. And a lot of times you're gonna catch quite a few more fish pitching a rig to those fish. So they're still here in this spot. I'm gonna pitch this rig out there. And this is just one way to fish a rig. You can certainly fish a rig by slow trolling it. That's kind of the traditional method where you just pull it around, you use a little bit heavier weight and pull that minnow across flats. And that works really well too. Just super slow, drag that minnow around. And a lot of times that's a good method, especially if the water's a little dirtier and you're trying to cover an area. I find in clear water, a lot of times those fish get really spooked from the boat and I don't like to do it that way. I prefer to pitch a rig to the fish and just let those fish chase that minnow down. All right, guys, I think I just had one pick it up. So I'm gonna feed him line a little bit here. Want him to take the bait. I like to give him about 6 to 8 seconds. And there we go, fish on. Oh, that is so fun. Rigging is so fun because you can feel everything that happens. Like you can feel a tick, you can feel him swimming away with the line. Oh, it's so awesome. Another nice fish here. He might be too big to eat actually. He's close, he's like that 19. The old boat flip, all right. That's a perfect eater right there. Just smoked that rigged minnow. And I was just working it through that school, just sort of letting it drag, and then I'll pull it up a little bit, let it fall, and he smoked it. I mean, I love this bite because you can really feel them whack it when they hit it. That one's going in the live well. All right, guys, one of the reasons I like rigging is you can get away with a little bit bigger minnows when you're rigging. It's hard to fish a bigger minnow on a jig head a lot of times, so if you happen to have some bigger ones, definitely use a rigging technique for them. It just allows you to fish a little bit bigger presentation without having to have it anchored to a jig. And again, when we're casting to these fish, you want to use about a 3-foot leader, and I like to use a lighter weight. It just gives a more natural presentation. And you're not necessarily relying on that weight to be keeping the bait down. Now, if you want to go with more of the traditional dragging method, I would definitely recommend going with a longer leader and a heavier weight. If you're moving along at 1/2 mile an hour or so, which is pretty typical for dragging these rigs, you're gonna have to use about a 3/8 to 1 ounce weight to keep that bait down there, just to make sure that it doesn't come way up off the bottom. You can tick the bottom once in a while, and that's basically what you want to do. You don't want to necessarily drag it, despite the term. You're just going to get snagged up an awful lot. And again, the longer leader is just going to help that bait get up off the bottom and kind of stay up in the face of the fish. Now when it comes to bait, basically all we have here in Wisconsin available are suckers this time of year. And unfortunately we don't get red-tailed chubs, but if you can get red-tailed chubs like they can in Minnesota, that is by far the best minnow to use for this, because they're very energetic and they tend to swim up off the bottom, where suckers like to go more towards the bottom. But suckers obviously do work. That's kind of your basics. I'm gonna see if I can pick up one more here. Yeah, they're chasing it. They're chasing it. Come on, buddy. Come on. Come on. Come on. Oh, that's a big fish. Big fish. Eat it. Eat it. Eat it. Oh, he ate it. He ate it. All right, I'm gonna give it to him. That is such an awesome way to do it. Like if they're finicky, you just wait till they start chasing it and then pull it away from them. Super effective. And that's why I like that lighter weight, because if you use too heavy of a weight when you're doing this, it's not gonna look natural. It's gonna pull them too fast to the bottom. So that 1/4 ounce is just perfect. Ooh, this is a nice one. This is a nice one. I'm gonna grab the net. There we go, another dandy. Another dandy. Super, super fun fit way to fish. I just love feeling that thunk, that pickup, and you know you got them. It's just a matter of giving them a few seconds. And again, I don't want to give them like 10 seconds because then they'll swallow it. But like this one, he was hooked right there, right in the corner of the mouth, just perfect. Nice 20-ish inch fish there. And again, these fish get so aggressive in the fall. I mean, that was a big minnow and this guy just came up and chomped it. So that's why I love fishing minnows in the fall. The walleyes just turn a corner and it's on. We're gonna let this guy go. So I know we got to get to a couple of these other methods, but I'm going to try one more cast at these fish. I'm going to use a little smaller minnow this time. And like dragging it away from that school was super effective last time. I'm going to try it again here and see if they'll hit this one. But basically that's why when you're blind fishing and just dragging these around, you don't want that weight dragging on the bottom, because that minnow is just going to be skittering along the bottom. You want it up above the fish. So when you tick bottom, you want to pull it up and drag it up high once in a while, versus just letting it drag along bottom. One thunked it already. Give them about a 5 to 8 count, somewhere in there. Fish on, just like that. And that seems to be what they want today. They do not want it on the bottom, at least on the rig. They're wanting it kind of drifting over their heads, and it's so stinking effective. Absolutely awesome. These fish are on fire on these minnows today. Oh yeah, another nice one. These are all just like cookie cutter 19, 20 inchers. Another perfect rigging fish right there. And he didn't get it too deep either. Just that you get that perfect count for the day, and you can kind of get it figured out how far down they're gonna have it. And he had it just inside the mouth. Perfectly releasable fish right there. So I think he might be a 19 incher though, so I think he might go in the old live well as well. So that pretty much covers rigging, guys. There's basically 2 ways to do it. You can pitch to fish like I am today, which works particularly well with forward-facing sonar and more clear water when those fish are spooking from the boat. And then you can drag them or pull them around, especially in dirtier water and when the fish are scattered. And if you don't have any way to see those fish, pulling these rigs works really well. Just remember to get them up above the bottom once in a while. Now the tackle I'm using for rigging is very important. I'll cover that really quick. I'm using a St. Croix Icon Walleye Series rigging rod. This is a technique specific rod. It's a 7-foot medium light power fast action rod. It's got a nice soft tip that'll load up when the fish takes the bait, got enough backbone to set the hook, and it's just a great rod for this technique. I've rigged that with a 3000 size spinning reel and 15-pound braid and a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader. You can go up to 10 in murkier water, but in this super clear water, I like the 6-pound. And then I'm using a number 2 VMC Tech Set hook. These Tech Set hooks are octopus style, but they have a little extra gap there that helps hold that minnow's mouth on there really well. And super sharp, super strong hook. So I'll leave a link in the description for all these, and you can check them out if you want. Now let's move on to technique number 2. And technique number 2 is super fun to fish any time of the year, and it works really well in fall, and that is slip bobber fishing. But this is typically something I do on weed lines. So I have to go find some fish in the weeds here so we can go catch them on slip bobbers. All right guys, well I actually ended up having to move lakes here. The sun came up, the wind died, and that bite that I had this morning just shut down. I mean, I was on a super clear lake this morning. I could see fish up shallow in the weeds, but they would not bite. So I ended up moving to a little bit darker, more stained kind of algae bloom lake. And I think we're gonna be able to get them on the slip bobber here, and that should be no problem. So I'm actually set up on a crib right now. We're gonna pitch this out there, but basically it's the same exact slip bobber rig I'm using in the springtime for leeches. I may beef up the slip bobber a little bit if I'm using bigger minnows, just so they can't swim down with it. But the only other alteration is I'm using a treble hook on there instead of a single hook. I just get better hookup ratios with minnows and trebles. So, and that is a Clam Outdoors gaff treble with that cool finish on it. I really like that oily, slick looking finish. So basically we're just gonna pitch this thing out there roughly to where these fish are. And we always want the slip bobber to be above the fish. You never want that minnow down in the fish, you want it above them. So whether you're fishing a weed line, keep it 2-3 feet up. You know, if you're fishing a crib, keep it 3-4 feet off the bottom. A lot of times these fish are not really on the bottom, they're kind of suspended. Now what you want to watch for when you're slip bobber fishing is for that bobber to get super active. And a lot of times right before you get a bite, the bobber will actually come up and lay flat, and that just means that the minnow is actually trying to get up and away from those fish. He's swimming up and he's pulling the sinkers up. There she goes. One decided to eat it. Now I'm just gonna let him have it for a good 5 to 10 seconds. It's a fairly big minnow. Then I want to tighten up and then set the hook. You always want to tighten up first because there's a lot of slack in there, and you don't want these fish, you don't want to have a light hook set on them. You got to sink that barb and get it through the minnow. Feels like a decent one. Definitely decent. Am I gonna need the net? Oh yeah, I am gonna need the net. This is a nice one. There we go, nice fish. Not a boat flipper. Just a little bit too big to boat flip on the 6-pound test leader. I could probably beef up the leader here, but I still have what I had tied on in that clear lake. But in these darker lakes, you can definitely get away with a little bit heavier leader, like up to 8 or 10 pound. But that's a nice start on the slip bobber. The old slip bobber eye. Now for slip bobber fishing, I really like to use medium to large minnows, and they just seem to work better. They're a little more energetic, and kind of that size is a great size, like that 4 or 5 inch minnow. And if you guys want to learn more about slip bobber fishing in general, I highly recommend watching my tutorial on slip bobbers that I filmed this spring. It covers all the details you need to know to really get good at it, and I just don't have time to cover all that here. But if you want to watch that, I'll leave a link down below in the description for that. And slip bobber fishing honestly just gets better and better as the fall progresses. It's not my favorite when the conditions are like this in early fall, but it does get better later and later in the fall, because those fish tend to kind of sit on spots, especially on weed lines and cribs, and they tend to want that minnow more stationary. Right now these fish are still pretty aggressive, and they will chase a rig or a jig no problem, and they actually prefer to chase a lot of times. So sometimes slip bobber fishing is not the best for early in the fall, but you can certainly still catch them that way, especially if it's your preferred method. Oh, he got hit, and there he goes, just like that. That took probably 1.5 minutes to get a bite. Now that last one had it swallowed pretty good, so this one I'm not going to give quite as much time. And you kind of with like the rigging, you get a feel for how long to give them after a little while, how fast they're going to swallow that bait. And you kind of can get an idea after the first couple fish how long you should give it to them. Another nice fish. There we go. Almost a carbon copy of the last one here. And just like I said, it's in there just a little bit, not quite down in the stomach. And I gave him a little less time, so that makes sense. So that fish is perfectly releasable, and just got that timing down. So We're gonna get him back in the water here. Now let's talk about locations. When it comes to fishing walleyes with a slip bobber, you want places that are gonna hold fish in one area and concentrate fish. Kind of like this crib we're fishing here today. These fish are hanging around this area and they're not moving. So cribs, rock piles, the edges, inside and outside turns of weed beds are great places that are gonna concentrate fish. Fish are gonna hit those points over and over throughout the day. Oh, see that? It went flat. That means that minnow's swimming up and trying to get away from a fish right now. They're chasing him and he's coming up trying to get away and he's pulling those weights up. So basically, as the fall progresses, you want to fish starting on deep cribs, moving to shallower cribs, rock piles, and then weeds typically get better and better as the season progresses. So, oh, they just ate him, yep. I knew they were chasing him. So we're gonna give her a 5 count here, tighten up, and wallop, fish on. And weeds, like I was saying, are super, super key late in the fall. What happens is the weeds die down and all those fish that were in the weeds, all those bait fish, they end up coming out of the weeds and kind of getting out where those walleyes can eat them. And the walleyes just hang on those weed edges and eat them as they get exposed. And you can fish weed lines with slip bobbers all the way basically into ice up. Some of those last few days before ice up can actually be some of the best. And basically, if you're catching fish early ice somewhere and you're used to catching fish with tip ups, try those areas because that's where those fish are oftentimes going to be. And you can get them before the crowd gets out there on the ice. So that's basically slip bobber fishing, guys. And now it's time to go catch some on the jig. All right, guys, let's get back to jigging. So jigging is my favorite way to catch walleyes year round. And the jig and minnow really comes back into play in October. We've been fishing with plastics and jig and night crawlers most of the summer, but now is the time to switch back to minnows. And you can still catch these fish on plastics, but there are certain days where it really makes a difference to have that live bait on there in the fall. And I'm just fishing this time of year early in the fall, like early October, very similar to how I was fishing that night crawler. I'm just gonna use a 1/4 ounce jig, fishing a little deeper water here. And I'm gonna put one of the smaller minnows that I have down there. I like a little bit smaller minnow on a jig than on the other true presentations we've talked about. You can also use more like half dead minnows too, which is kind of nice. If you have some that are belly up, you can kind of create some action with those minnows and you don't really have to worry about them being alive. Now, one of the ways I fish these, like I said, is very similar to the night crawler. I'm just gonna cast it over fish I'm seeing on forward facing. I'm just gonna slowly reel it away from those fish. I don't necessarily want them to be able to catch it right away. I want them to chase it and get excited and come after it. I don't want to have to let them get bored. Well, guys, it's just too nice out to catch fish shallow right now. They're just super spooky. They're in the weeds, but they're not biting very well. We need some bad weather, some cold fronts and stuff to get those shallow fish a little more active. But I'm going to show you what I do use in shallow water later in the fall especially. And that is going to be a VMC tungsten moon eye 1/8 ounce with a fat head on it. And I'll see if I can catch a fish or two out here deep with it. Should work out here too, but I'll kind of give you a rundown of how I fish this. So basically, I'm gonna cast this out, gonna let it hit bottom. And I often do this along weed lines, right? I'm just gonna lift and fall. Lift and fall. Every once in a while, I'll do a little shake with the rod tip on the way up and then fall. Basically just how we're doing it in the spring. Almost the same technique. There's a bite. I'm gonna let him have it for a second. Wham! Got him. So they will eat the small jig and minnow out deep too. It's just not the most efficient way to catch them. And it seems like they want bigger baits earlier in the year like this. This is a pretty good fish actually though. He's staying down. Oh wow. This might be a really nice fish. Interesting. Sometimes small bait, big fish, guys. There we go. Perfect. Really nice walleye. Look at that one. That's a chunk. Really nice fat fish. I mean, just a torpedo. Look at the back on that thing. Cool. Whoa. There he goes, quick release. So that's basically how to jig with minnows in the fall. To recap, just kind of start deeper with bigger baits, a little heavier jigs, and kind of work your way shallower as the fall progresses, and downsize in weight and bait and start fishing those weed edges once you get into the 40s. Now, I have that fourth bonus technique I gotta show you. So before we do that, real quick tip for keeping bait lively, especially when it's a little warmer in early fall like it is now. I like to use an angle cooler, and then I've got my Rapala R12 aerator on here. This is the most amazing aerator I've ever owned. You can probably barely hear it right now, and it's right next to my microphone here, and it's lasting all day on low. It'll last almost 2 days on low on intermittent, and it's got 2 speeds. If you really want to aerate the water, you can crank it up to high. It's got replaceable batteries, so I can put one battery on the charger and replace it with this one, so I can keep bait fresh literally almost forever. Plus that battery works with their electric knife, their heated vest, etc. So I'll leave a link down below for that. And then inside in the water, I just threw a frozen Gatorade bottle in there just to keep the water cool. It's like 80 something today, so it's pretty hot. Once it gets cooler later in the fall, minnows get a lot easier to keep. But this whole setup is pretty nice, so definitely check that out. All right, now let's get into the fourth way to catch walleyes in the fall. All right, guys, so what is this secret fourth rig for fall fishing? Well, it is the drop shot rig. And the drop shot rig is a very effective live bait rig, but it's really effective for minnows in the fall. And basically, I like to use a medium-sized minnow on this, and I like to fish it kind of like a Lindy rig. And I'll show you what I mean in a second here. I like to use a number 4 VMC drop shot hook, 1/4 ounce weight, and I'll show you how I fish this in the fall here. See if we can't get one more fish today. They're definitely getting a little bit wore out here, but I think we can probably pull one more on this rig. So what I like to do is let that rig go to bottom, and then I actually don't tighten up the rig yet. I'm just gonna let it sit there for a minute and let that minnow kind of swim around on that leash and see if something picks it up. If not, I'm gonna drag it a little ways, and then again, let that minnow swim around. And what that does is it pulls it away from the fish, and then they'll follow it, and then it swims around and darts away, shoots for the bottom or shoots to the side, and a lot of times that triggers the fish to hit it. And I think one did hit it. Indeed, when I let that line loose, that's when he hit it. So I'm gonna give him a second, just like we do with any of the other minnow baits. Oh, I missed him. He definitely had it. Well, guys, I had my chance. I missed them, and now they're not cooperating. So I do assure you that this is a good method to use, especially later in the fall. It seems like right now, again, those fish are in a chasing mood, and this is kind of more of a slow and steady presentation. But basically, that's it, guys. That's fall walleye fishing with minnows. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you next time. Get hooked up.